This is a short video on how to defeat shadow banning and censorship by YouTube and Google on YouTube. Google Alphabet owns YouTube. I just started my browser. I have cleared all the cookies. I have not logged into my Google account. So it's representative of what someone might see who hasn't been searching for a while or that kind of thing. So it gives you some idea what YouTube is going to do when you do various searches in general. So let me try a search. So this is Peter Doshi flu shot. And I'm just going to go ahead and start the search here and see what comes up. Okay. Now let me explain why this is significant. Peter Doshi is a senior editor with the BMJ, the British Medical Journal. He has a Ph.D. from MIT. He's a noted, sort of mainstream, well-qualified critic, specifically of the influenza vaccines, the so-called annual flu shots. He's raised a lot of questions about these and about the numbers and statistics on the Centers for Disease Control's website and documents on pneumonia and influenza. All of this predates COVID. He's written editorials and articles in the New York Times about problems with the COVID vaccine testing. He's very well qualified. He's certainly not somebody who would be considered a crank. He's a faculty member at the University of Maryland, and he's worked for a number of prominent universities like Johns Hopkins. And instead of him coming up, we get these mostly promotional, get the flu shot, get the COVID vaccines videos. So here we have the flu shot and the COVID-19 vaccine, flu vaccinations and COVID-19. The flu vaccine explained. These are generally promotional videos for getting the flu vaccine. Now, Peter Doshi is actually in this video here. He did actually show up in one of the search results. Several down. It's not at all obvious. Well, here he is, Peter Doshi. So he does actually show up here, but way down, below the fold of the paper, if you will, or of the front page, right? You'd have to scroll down through all this propaganda before you actually got Peter Doshi. And this happens with many topics which YouTube is shadow banning. Some of them are very strange topics, UFOs or some of David Icke's bizarre claims. Some, like concerns about the safety of vaccines and other pharmaceutical products, are very mainstream. They're things we would all be concerned about that are quite scientific and rational and mainstream, not very far out. And what Peter Doshi talks about is not very far out at all. In fact, there are gross problems with the CDC statistics, for example, which he wrote his Ph.D. dissertation on, has published several articles on in the British Medical Journal and other places, as have a number of other scientists and investigative reporters. None of that comes up here, at least not very easily. If you did listen to this one, you probably would hear a little bit about it. Okay, how do we get around this? Well, look in the upper left corner, and you have a choice of filters. By default, YouTube is using something called Relevance, as opposed to, say, when the video was uploaded, or how many people watched it, or perhaps, I don't know what ratings is, it may be likes versus dislikes. Okay, so it defaults to what Google and YouTube are calling relevance. This often turns out to be grossly biased on a range of topics. Google, it's worth remembering, is highly integrated with the Democratic Party. We're major supporters of Hillary Clinton in 2016 and Joe Biden. Eric Schmidt, the former head of Google and Alphabet, is heavily involved in the Democratic Party. They're also heavily involved in the pharmaceutical industry. And remember, they depend entirely on advertising for their money. There's almost no revenues for Google or YouTube other than advertising. And an awful lot of that advertising money is almost certainly coming from the pharmaceutical industry, as well as other powerful interest groups. So let's take a look at view count. We might be interested in something about Peter Doshi, which got a lot of views. And this is actually the video I was looking for. It's an interview that Peter Doshi did. It's an audio interview of the radio show on Newsmax, where he gives a very concise case explanation of some of the concerns with the influenza vaccine. And by the way, this picture here is not Peter Doshi. This is someone else. It's probably Tom Jefferson, a researcher he works with. He is younger than the person in this picture and looks significantly different. However, this is a good video, but it's actually very hard to find. And that's actually what I talk about in this video that I put up. My videos also tend not to show up under relevance. And you can see here that you get actual stuff about Peter Doshi. So you can do that with view count. You can do that with upload date, which allows you to get recent stuff, the most recent videos that were posted. So, for example, this one that actually is the one I was looking for was from several years ago, but it has a lot of views. And I'm not very familiar with what, excuse me, clicked the wrong thing. Let me go back up here. Yeah, okay, so again, the filters item is in the upper left corner when you scroll to the top of the page of search results. And you can also click on ratings. I'm not sure exactly what that does, but again, the same videos come up. Interestingly, if you now, after having done these other searches, click on relevance, something different happens. Lo and behold, Peter Doshi at the top. Here we get efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines, expert casts doubt. Peter Doshi actually in the text. Here is Peter Doshi speaking with some, this is Peter Doshi right here. As you notice, he doesn't look too much like the picture on the previous video. So here we have him discussing the COVID-19. This one, to be honest, I don't know if Peter Doshi is in it. He's probably not. So why that's showing up is an interesting question. Here we are, Peter Doshi. You get the idea. So somehow, once you've used these other features, the filter starts to work better when you click on it, at least. I don't know what was going to happen. But I want to point out what I showed, where the wrong, basically something that has nothing to do with Peter Doshi and the flu shot comes up. That really happens with a significant number of searches. Now, I search a lot of, we might say things that are not being promoted by the gigantic mega corporations, the pharmaceutical industry, the government, the military-industrial complex, anything like that. You will often find that these searches don't work very well, right? They don't turn up. The default searches at YouTube often don't turn up what you're actually looking for. They may turn up nothing or something vaguely related. They may turn up somebody ridiculing or debunking what you're looking for. Not infrequently, that ridiculing or debunking is remarkably content-free. It just uses ad hominem attacks or, various types of statements which, if you think through what they're saying, don't tell you anything about the substance of the issue. They're just intended to turn you off. And this is getting more and more blatant and obvious as the months go by. It's astonishing that people are still relying on Google with this kind of search results. I guess most people just go look for their neighborhood restaurant or something like that, and that has not become ridiculous yet. Looking for map directions to places, but we'll see what happens. These things have a way of getting worse and worse until they become so ridiculous that it's hard to believe. Anyway, the point is that's basically a way that you can currently, on June 17th, 2021, this video was produced on June 17th, 2021, you can get around some of the shadow banning and censorship. So again, just to remind people, you don't want to trust the default results of the searches. You want to click on filter, and you want to click on view count or upload date or possibly rating. As I illustrated, it's possible that after you do this, the relevance may start working better in a way more like what you would expect. Nonetheless, it's probably best to use these options. And that currently gets past some of the shadow banning as we see with Peter Doshi. That will probably change as the shadow banning and censorship by Google and YouTube gets worse and worse. That's very disappointing, and it will could very possibly destroy the company if people wake up and realize that they're basically getting propaganda, which is what this is. But if you, meanwhile, are already concerned about this or realize this is a problem, this is a way to get around it. For now, June 17th, 2021. That concludes this video. This concludes this video presentation. If you like this video, please click like. Please click subscribe and the notification bell if you would like to receive more content from us. You can avoid internet censorship by subscribing directly to our RSS news feed. Please consider sharing the link by email and on your website or blog, in addition to liking, upvoting, or sharing on increasingly censored, advertising beholden, big company social media. We have encountered such censorship. Mathematical software is developing algorithms and software to automate data analysis, reducing the risks of costly errors and increasing the predictive power of the results. You can support our work financially by subscribing on our Patreon page, https://www.patreon.com/mathsoft, or scanning the QR code in the lower right corner.